sights as the assault boats went in and smashed at the enemy's gun batteries farther inland. Yet so ingeniously fortified was this coastal zone that despite the deluge of bombs and shells from our air and sea bombardment, enemy counterfire was still effective as our men neared the beaches. Our first assault wave had a full share of heartbreaking misadventures. Many of their boats were hung up and wrecked on steel hedgehogs. Plunging fire from enemy batteries was extremely accurate.
Going in on D-Day, we had a 3-inch mortars. Well, we were in a landing craft tank, which is a bigger landing craft, and we're supposed to land 2 minutes ahead, but everything got kind of screwed up. Our landing craft hit a mine, so they dropped the landing craft off and it dropped us in the water. We had to swim to shore because we went under the water. It dropped us right in the bloody water. It was too deep, about 8 or 9 feet of deep water. So we had to swim in.
Born September 22nd, 1924, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Jim Parks, at the age of 97, shares his experiences joining the Canadian military at the age of 15, surviving the D-Day beach landings, his military background, and his experiences throughout the war and returning home to Canada.
Well, I'll tell you about the unit. The unit I was with was the Winnipeg Rifles after I switched from the Camerons. And they had a nickname called the Little Black Devils. And it's on their badge in the center, you have a little black devil. And in the Latin below, it's got Hosti Nasi Nominati. It means named by the enemy. In the 1870s or 18 or around that time, there was a rebellion out west, and they had the Indian chiefs and the Métis. They're still fighting against these soldiers. And there are two types of soldiers. There were some soldiers that they wore red, and the rifle regiments wore green. So when the battle was over, Chief Poundmaker said, "I know who these redcoats are, but who are these little black devils?"
Those are you guys.
That was the guys from green. So that's how they got the name. Oh, listen, I was 15. Yeah. He told him I was 18. My brother joined. He joined a year, 6 months older and 3 months older than I was. He was a year older, and of course he told him he's older too. He joined the Princess Pats. I joined the Cameron Highlanders, and we spent about the first year of the war, at the first winter, 40, 41, in Fort Osmond Barracks in Winnipeg. Yeah, and it was pretty cold, but it was, we got outfitted. It was pretty good outfit, a great coat and so on. We do all our drills outside in the cold weather, marching and with the rifle drill, all in the bloody cold water.
How cold was it? Do you remember? Like minus 20?
You look at the other day was 30 below in Winnipeg. Well, that's the type of weather you get.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the prairies, eh? It comes down from the Mackenzie River Valley. That's right from Alaska. It just comes right down. That nothing to stop the wind from blowing across the prairies. It hits Winnipeg. Yeah. So we spent our time at first year with the Cameron Highlanders, and like I said, in June 41, we transferred to the Winnipeg Rifles. They had a draft, and I was on guard duty, and they come along in the barracks, and they said they're looking for 20 volunteers to go to the Winnipeg Rifles, and 20 volunteers to go to the South Saskatchewan Regiment, and 20 volunteers to go to the Princess Pats. So my brother, I was on guard duty, he volunteered for me to go to the Winnipeg, because the Winnipegs, they said, would get a 48-hour pass starting the next day. The rest would have to wait for a week. He said, well, I might as well go with the Winnipeg and get a pass. He put my name down. I come off guard duty. He said, oh, you got a pass. I said, what for? And he told me I was now a Winnipeg Rifle. See, I got the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders crest. I was supposed to have the badge but I never got it done because I got shipped out. So I still got the Cameron Highlanders, Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders on there.
Wow.
But I wish I had the crest, you know. The Winnipeg Rifles had a little black devil. You get a little black devil on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to Winnipeg and we went to Camp Bird. And then in 1941 it was August 41. We were shipped over to England, Aldershot, England, and that was quite a deal because England at the time they put us along the coast on coastal duty because at that time there's still a threat of invasion. I thought of the Germans would invade southern England, so they stationed the Canadians and with the Brits along southern England. It was sort of we had our barracks and our pillboxes set up, but we still lived in the houses, and we were to get a warning, we were to go out into these barracks. We had these mines set up along the side of the road, so in a special box. If the warning came, we would put the mines out on the road. So if they did land, they'd have to go to the mines, right? That's how close it was at the time. Yeah. And the only difference, what changed their mind, the Germans changed their mind, instead of coming to England, they invaded Russia, you know, Poland, instead of coming our way. Then we started to do a lot of assault training, you know, on landing craft and so on. Yeah. After we did a lot of the defense of England, we used to practice. Sometimes we'd be the enemy. We'd be landing on the English shore. Make out you're landing. What you do is you make out you're the enemy, and the other troops would be the defending troops. Then sometimes we change around. We'd be the defense. We used to practice that a lot. And you'd get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. You'd be out all night. You're sitting waiting, and they'd say, "Stand to." Stand to means be ready. 100%. Your 50% stand to means half for sleeping and half for report. Then we 100% stand to. Everybody is awake. And then we did that practice for about a year or two. Yeah. Then we got every year 3 months we got a 9-day leave, and every month we got a 48-hour leave. The idea was to try to save money to go on leave. For 10 bob, which is about $2.50, you can go a long way in the wartime with $2.50, because you're troops, you're allowed free transportation on the railways and on the buses, as long as you're traveling in the same direction, north. So you always say, "Where are you going on leave?" We're going to Edinburgh, Scotland. So long as you're heading north, you stop at London and one or two other places and go to Edinburgh, you know, or further up.
Yeah.
Craigleith would be way up at the top. We went to Edinburgh a few times. We liked Edinburgh. It's really nice. They liked Canadians up there, and we had this guy called McBride, who was a real character. He's a fellow that they used to have a little mouth organ with 4 notes on it. You ever see those? You could put it on his mouth. We're marching along and he'd play a tune, and the officer in charge of our platoon, who's got that mouth organ? Nobody knew. We go along and all of a sudden he'd whistle again, a long way to Tipperary, or something like that. We never found out until maybe a month later. And this officer we had was in charge, was a saber champion. You know saber? He was a saber champion of Canada, a guy called Sector, Lieutenant Sector. And he said, "You're the guy that's been playing that mouth organ, you know." He said, "No," he says, "I borrowed it from him." The guy said, yeah. The worst part I didn't like was guard, because you had to get all dressed up, get all your equipment good. I didn't mind working in the kitchen, because if you're peeling potatoes, you could always keep a few extra potatoes to take back to the barracks. And what we used to take is, if you get some lard, and put some lard in a tin, and put it against the fireplace to melt it, you cut out potatoes and throw it in for French fries, see?
Oh, yeah.
Did a lot of training. I told you, went up to Scotland. We did assault landing training. First of all, you did one platoon at a time using live ammunition. Then you used one company, which is three platoons, live ammunition. Then you had artillery, live ammunition firing ahead of you. And they allowed 30% casualties when you allowed that. We only had a few. And I remember going in, I had an upset stomach, and I couldn't wait to get off the landing craft. I was like, geez, I got to head for the bush or something. We got off, and there's live ammo. I had I had what you call a Bangalore torpedo, which is a long pipe loaded with explosives, and on the one end was plugged, and the other end had the detonator. And you shoved it underneath the barbed wire, and you struck it, and it blew a hole in the barbed wire 4 feet wide. So I ran ahead, I struck it, and I headed for the bush. I'll never forget that. Holy Jesus. A lot of people, my brother, Jack, he stayed in the reserve afterwards, eh?
And how much older was your brother?
15 months. 15 months.
15 months. Oh wow!
Yeah.
So only a year and a bit.
Yeah. He stayed until he retired in 1953. He retired. I had another brother, Godfrey. He was from a mother's first family. He ended up in the service corps. He was a cook. He wanted to be a cook, and they trained him to be a chef. And he was attached to Regina Rifles, which is another infantry unit. The Leopold Canal was I don't know if you heard of the Leopold Canal. It was in the Breskin's Pocket, which is a place in Belgium where the Germans were pretty well entrenched. And the Leopold Canal, you had to get across the canal. It was quite a battle to get across. And he was a cook for the company cook for one of the Regina Rifles companies, which means you'd have to prepare the food a day echelon, which is about a mile back, and then bring the hot food back if you could. So they did that, and they said, you have to get out of here quick. So he was going to get out of there quick, and he said they get in the truck, 1500 weight, they loaded everything all up, and he liked to get in the back. They throw a camouflage net, you jump in the back, and he could sit and have a smoke. He was a corporal, and he could have sat in the front. So the puck flew away, hit a mine, killed the two guys in front, and he survived. It blew him about 100 feet away, and he landed on his back, and he hurt his back. His back was bad and his hip was bad for the rest of his life. He had to take treatment for it. But if he would have been in the front, he would have been finished. He was entitled to sit in the front because he's a corporal, but he didn't. Going in on D-Day, we had a 3-inch mortars. We were in a landing craft tank, which is a bigger landing craft, and we're supposed to land 2 minutes ahead of the infantry landing craft to set up our mortars and pop in some smoke bombs. But everything got kind of screwed up. First of all, our landing craft hit a mine, and they pushed up further, and we hit a shoal. It was before the shoal, and the water was deep, but he thought we already hit the land. So he dropped the landing craft off, and it dropped us in the water. We had to swim to shore because we went under the water. It dropped us right in the bloody water. It was too deep, about 8 or 9 feet of deep water. So we had to swim in, and we lost our landing craft and lost our mortars and all. Swallowing a lot of water, I saw stars, when the boat. I had to swim. I went under the water a bit, and I remember seeing, it wasn't stars, it was like a white sheet. And the sheet wasn't in front of me like this, it was like that way. Yeah. It's sort of a, I was looking for the sheet, was like that. It wasn't in front of me like this. It was like that. Yeah. Kind of odd, eh? That's why I remember it so well. We got in, and I plopped down beside this guy, Corporal Scaife, whom I knew, but he was mortally wounded. So I lost everything, so I grabbed his Sten gun. You know what a Sten gun is? Yeah. I grabbed the Sten gun and moved into the what they call the sandbanks. Yeah. The sandbanks, and there's pillboxes there and so on. But I don't know how we ever got past all that, because there's supposed to be mines along that, but there weren't that many mines. We were able to get through. There weren't many people got in the mines. You had to have a vehicle, but running around, it didn't bother us. But a couple of vehicles coming later on, they hit the mines and they blew the track off, you know. But we were kind of lucky running across it. We weren't able, the weight of our body wouldn't set it off, you know. So we got into those pillboxes, and we cleared them out. The Jerry's, we didn't realize that they were still in there. Nobody was firing. So one guy said, "I wonder if it's what's it like inside the pillbox?" He went out and he came with 5 German soldiers. They didn't want to. They didn't know what to do. They wanted to surrender, but they didn't want to do any firing because we were all around them. So, and it's just so happens, his name was Pete Enns. It's like he could speak German. He said the first thing they said, "Ye Gates," means how are you? He says, "Hand the hoe, hands high." He came marching out with them, 5 of them. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Just initially there was, you could hear the ping pong on the side of your landing craft. Then it stopped. So they gave up shooting because people are all landing all around them. So then they gave the first chance they got was surrender. They did to Pete Enns, eh? Yeah. So that was and then it was pretty quiet once we got past the beach. Some sniper fire was quiet. And the next day we had to move into a place called, our objective was a place called Puteaux en Besson, they call it. And that was the Oak Line, they call it the Oak Line. The Army always has the Oak Line is the first objective. And we went to the Oak Line and we dug in. And that's when the Germans put their counterattack. We had the 12th SS Hitler Youth. They called it Hitlerjugend. That was Hitler's prize division, armored. There's an armored. There's 18,000. From what I understand, there's 18,000 troops with various tanks, armored tanks, because they were an armored division, and they were all SS. The Hitler Youth, the officers and the NCOs were former veterans from the Russian front, and they're all SS. You know, an SS was the real predominant Nazi, right? So that's what we have. They always put their best troops against Canadians. So I don't know what it was, but Canadians had a reputation. They still do. In hockey and everything else, eh? Yeah. So they always had the best troops against the Canadians. Because they said they didn't know when to quit. You know, they just whatever they did, they just kept going. Where the Brits, they did go, but they didn't know when to stop. But the Canadians just kept on going. Yeah. They lose a couple, but they just keep on going. Yeah. That's their version. That's where they dug in. That's where we got overrun. But the SS. Yeah. The 12th SS. And I remember I was told with this corporal from C Company, a corporal, go along this hedgerow to get to the next roadway. There was a big hedge, and stay there and let us know when anybody's coming. So we went along the hedgerow. It's a good thing we did. We hear all this firing going on with a place where we just left about 100 yards behind. The SS overran the rest of our platoon. A lot of them come, and a few of them come running back, and it mixed up with us. So we end up getting into this place called a farm, the Bergier Farm, and we got spread out among there. It was one of the companies was in, I think it was Charlie or Dog Company was in reserve, and they were in that farmhouse. So there's 2-3 of the guys were already there. So we come running back there too, and they said, and I just before I got into the farm, there's a stone wall. They had stone wall all around the farm, 100 foot. This is back in Normandy. The farmhouses used to build a big stone wall right around it, and built into the wall inside was all the huts and the house and everything else, and in a courtyard in the center with a well. And so when I got to ran to this walls, a guy from the Canadian Scottish threw a rope over the side. So I pulled myself up there, and I had my Sten gun hanging over. He says, we're going into an counterattack in 10 minutes. Can you loan me your Sten gun? I said, I got no ammo left. I got a couple empty mags. And he said, I'll get the ammo. He said, I'll give you my rifle. You give me your Sten gun. So I gave him the Sten gun I picked up on the beach in Corporal Scaife. And I gave him a couple of magazines. I think I had a few rounds left of one of them. I gave him the Sten gun, and he gave me his rifle. So the Canadian Scottish guy went and he had a Sten gun that I picked up off the beach. Yeah.
The
The beach?
Yeah, do you remember?
Well, I remember this Tommy Plum. He was all excited. We're going in there, Jimmy. We're going in. Bob, we're going in there. We're going in there. He's all excited about going in there. And I'm always worried. What the hell do you mean getting it? Because you could hear the machine gun fire hitting against the side of we got closer in. Then it stopped. Just for a minute, you could hit the side of the boat. Because it couldn't go through the boat. Because we're inside our carriers too, which is another that much thicker too. So no chance of us getting hit unless you get a bomb, But it was pretty touch and go when I think about it. But that first day and the next day was kind of quiet. But Puteaux, when he got overrun, that's when it was really hectic. We lost a lot of people there. About 100. I think we lost 159 we lost on the beach. And we had, when you total up the amount of people, we had up a few, on the 8th of June we got overrun, we got a lot of people were captured. We lost over, on the beach, plus the 8th of June, over 400. Because we got reinforcements as soon as we got in. And out of the capture, they captured a bunch of our guys. They murdered 56. So Kurt Meyer was the what they call the divisional or brigade commander of the Germans. He got tried under the War Crimes Commission, and they commuted a sentence on death. They commuted a sentence to life. And part of his life, he come back to Canada, working in Nova Scotia. Then they used his ability as a general or officer. We had to have defense of our northwest Canada, the Alaska Highway. So he went up assisting the engineers on planning the defense of the Alaska Highway, where they put the defenses. Yeah. So why not use his ability, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kurt Meyer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up getting in with Blondie Ends. I ended up being in his run gun carrier, an extra guy in Blondie Ends' carrier, and that was kind of nice. There's Tommy Plum was one sergeant, Pete Enns, Dew Towers, Randall. We had different. Dude was like to fancy himself as a cowboy. He come from Dauphin, Manitoba. He had a horsewhip and he used to practice the horsewhip. Yeah. Yeah, he'd look for any dandelions around. He ended up being a sergeant. He did well. Yeah, he did well. A good soldier. Most of the guys that our NCOs were turned out pretty good, Most of the guys turned out pretty good too. Yeah. The guy I used to dig in the hole with Bob Hussey. And it used to be, Jim, the only way we're going to get out of here is feet first. We're only going to get out of here is feet first. They'd be shelling the hell of each other. We dug in and we were sitting there, and the one shell landed real close by. And we had parapets all lined up, and we got down low, and it blew all the dirt down and covered me up with dirt. And Bob Hussey, he's the guy that he started digging out, and he grabbed my helmet and woke me up, because this when it landed that close, it sort of disoriented you, you know. You didn't know where the hell you were. And I had my helmet on, and he yanked my helmet and woke me up. Yeah, he dug me up. I wasn't going to be, I just had enough dirt on me, but he dug me up. And he said, and he's the guy that's the only way to get out of here is feet first. You know, carrying you out dead. Yeah. But he was a good soldier, Bob. Very, not uptight, but very quick. He's one of these guys who can climb up a rope like that. Yeah, very quick. But a very, very good soldier, you know. Like we're in the mortars, and he'd be number 2 guy, which puts the bombs down. He could just put them down, bam, 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 bam. You know, if you're 10 rounds rapid fire, bam, bam, bam. You no sooner one was going out, he's got it down, and when you throw it down hard, you're hitting your finger on the side of the barrel, you know. And so his finger would be kind of swollen from on the barrel. Yeah, the ending, you know, were the last week or so, we didn't fire any, because they figured it was going to be a surrender, so we didn't fire any bombs or anything else, and we kept ourselves secluded so we wouldn't be out in the open. Although a few Canadians were killed by sniper fire, but we made sure that we stayed secluded. They said, make sure you don't get out in the open, anything else. We made sure we didn't do that, you know. So we're kind of lucky that way. That they anticipated a surrender, the war would be ending, and we got information about the Russian front, and they wanted to surrender to us before the Russians. I forget who went first. My memory isn't that good, but the 8th of May was the official truce, right? Yeah. But around about the first week in May, we were sort of taking it easy. Yeah. We didn't fire any bombs or anything else, no. We should have gone home earlier, but we didn't. We didn't get home until about September of '45, which is about 5 months later. Which wasn't, when you think about it, with the amount of troops they had to move, that was pretty good. Yeah. That's a little story about here. That's from the second committee, the members brand. This is Anna Marie Valois. Anna Marie Valois. She was a nurse. And the Dieppe Parade, remember they had the Dieppe Parade in 1942? A lot of the wounded Canadian soldiers came to, what was that village on the Seine River. They came to the hospital, and she was in charge of the Canadian wounded. So they called her the Angel of Rouen. So that's her name was Anna Marie Valois, and she got the same medal from French, the Legion of Merit, and that's what the medal is up there. Yeah. Wow. And this is another fellow who's he landed on D-Day in August. He got wounded, and they sent him back. He fixed him up and was sent him back. Then he became battle exhaustion. Did your nerves go? So you had to recognize that. They take you back for 4 days to get away from action, see if he recover. He never recovered. So they sent him back to England and back to Canada. Yeah. So this is taken over in Benny-sur-Mer, France. There's a cemetery there, and he was there, and a picture of Anna Marie Valois. Well, just think of where you're from, the country you live in, and why all the freedoms you have. You take it for granted because the time you're growing up, you get you ready for school, kindergarten, and so on. You don't think about, unless when you get to school, you sing "Oh Canada" and so forth. And gradually, over a period of time, you get to know more about your country, and you know about how they preserve the country. And the thing is, if you can, do a little bit more research on the history of the country itself. So as long as you look after yourself, look after your neighbors, be friendly as you can, and keep out of trouble. I've been a cadet. My dad had been in World War One. Uncles had been in World War One, and my mother's first husband was killed in World War One. So we had a split family. She had some of her family from the First War, and my dad had some from the First War. Plus, we got together. We had another family of my mother, who was a widow. She then got married to my dad. So there's 4 more. So we got some from my mother's side and some from my dad's side. And my mother's side, most of them went down to the States, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
But he stayed back and sort of saved everyone.
Yeah, he stayed back and.
Wow.
The KIA means killed in action.
Killed in action, yeah.
The 8th of June. That's when we got overrun. Yeah.
Wow.
My name is Jim Parks, and I was born on September the 22nd, 1924, which makes me one of the younger guys around, if you can call it that. And I spent my first part of my years during the Depression in Winnipeg. That's where I was born, and that's where I enlisted with the cadets. I remember when I was in Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo. There's a lot of German ancestry there, and a lot of immigrants we had were German immigrants. And I remember we had a coffee club. We had 2 or 3 ex-German soldiers with us, and one guy was called Herman, little guy called Herman, and he said he told his little story. He said before the war, he said I was in a school, and he said they had these teachers coming over, and Mr. Spence was one of our English teachers coming over, but he become enamored with one of the German teachers. In other words, he sort of fell in love with her, and that was, you weren't supposed to. So he shipped him back to England. So when the invasion come in, Mr. Spence was in one of these British troops, and Herman's telling me this in Waterloo. He said, we had these British prisoners, and he said, I recognize this voice, because after at 5 o'clock, under the Geneva Convention, the prisoners had to stop and have a break, have supper, and go back to barracks. He said, I recognize this officer in charge. And he says, it was Mr. Spence. And he says, I walked up to him and I says, things are different now, aren't they, Mr. Spence? I said, what did Mr. Spence say? He says, Spence, it's early yet. It's early yet. That's 1944. Eh? You know what that meant? It's early in the war. It's early yet for Herman. And Herman told me this. He's a German veteran that I knew in Waterloo. A nice guy. We got to know each other quite well. And he was a paratrooper. And I said, he was about 5'4", 5'3", and I said, how come you got into paratroopers? He says, all the paratroopers, the German paratroopers, were 5'5", 5'4". He says, you get an aircraft, you had a stick of 9 soldiers. But if they're all 5'4", 5'5", you get 9. But they're 5'10", 5'11", you only get 7 or 8 in an aircraft. So you had to have all those paratroopers are all 5'4", 5'5". And I always thought until that time, because that's what you saw. I remember they had this before the war. They had this heavyweight championship bout, and they had this German Max Schmeling. His name was. He was a German paratrooper. So he was a boxer. They come over to fight the heavyweight championship of the world against a guy called Joe Louis. And so, and he come in there, and he's a big guy, and he fought. He was doing pretty well against Louis, but you weren't allowed to punch, kidney punch, right?
Yeah.
So Louis wrapped him 2-3 kidney punches. It set him up so they will knock him out. And that was, he got away with it because everybody wanted the German soldier to get beaten, right? That was Max Schmeling. So but Max Schmeling was, you thought all the paratroopers would be like Max Schmeling. 6 foot, 190 pounds, a boxer, but no, 5'4", 5'5", wiry, strong, you know. What do you call little packages of dynamite? You got to watch for these little guys, you know. I'm not far from being little myself, 5'8", for God's sake.
I was gonna say my granddad was a paratrooper, and I think he was only 5'5" as well.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he was a short fellow.
My God.
Yeah, he was only about 5'5", I think. He was
he's a paratrooper.